Seems I ruffled some feathers with that video. Don't worry, it's gonna get a whole lot worse. My name is Miriam Hadad, and I'm a priestess. And as my surname suggests, I am a priestess of Baal Hadad. But I was not always a priestess of Baal Hadad. And so just a little bit about me. I am Jewish, but I grew up super Christian. I was adopted, and I was raised about as evangelical as you can possibly imagine. My parents subscribed to a theology called premillennial dispensationalism. Say that 5 times fast. It was basically rapture theology. And to those who aren't familiar with it, rapture theology is, if you're familiar with the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins, it's what those books are all about. The idea is that for people who genuinely believe in Jesus or whatever, that before what's called the tribulation period, which is a period of 7 years of apocalyptic horrors, supposedly outlined in the book of Revelation at the end of the Bible, that all of the true believers would be yeeted up to heaven before any of that started. So I was raised to believe that I might never die, which is a really interesting thing to be raised with in retrospect, because as it happens, I'm dying. I have been fighting long COVID for 2 years, and I also have leukemia. And I have about a year to live, just slightly less. And I know that it's just slightly less, because I have a piece of knowledge that I don't think anyone should live with, which is that I know not only the day that I will die, but I know to within a fairly close margin the hour when I will die, and also how I will die. And I'm not going to put that out there, I may change my mind about that. But for the time being, what you should know is that I'm a prophet. I have known that I was a prophet since I was about 4. And I have always been very close with the Holy Spirit. I've been very sensitive to the Holy Spirit's presence in my life. I have never had any difficulties discerning the voice of the Spirit, so to speak, in my mind's ear, not an out loud type voice, like a hallucination, but it's just in sort of the way that people daydream and stuff. It's and they say you see things in your mind's eyes, my mind's ear. That was most of my life. And I started to get sick when I was a teenager. It started with some autoimmune stuff where my joints would swell up. I was eventually diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and I had that diagnosis rescinded when I was in my mid-20s. And it was just my health has been an unnamed but constant low-grade disaster until the end of 2022, when 6 months to the day after I had contracted COVID at my wedding, I developed a slate of symptoms that didn't make any sense. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of what my disease has looked like, because these have a time limit of 10 minutes, and I have a lot of other things that I want to say in this video. But the thing to know is that long COVID has absolutely destroyed my body. Long COVID works similarly to AIDS in that it destroys your body's ability to do something. So in the case of AIDS, it destroys your body's ability to fight off disease and infection. In the case of long COVID, it destroys your body's ability to regenerate. And what that has meant for me is that over time, my body has just fallen apart, has just stopped working. And so what that has meant for my cancer is that the cancer has had a much easier time of it, so to speak. A lot of I have hereditary mental illness and stuff. I've got type 2 bipolar disorder. It's very well medicated and controlled and stuff like that, but a lot of anxiety, neurodivergence, the whole gamut of mental health issues that people on this app seem to have. I've got most of those. Most of my mental health issues started to develop, my bipolar and my depression are hereditary, but a lot of my issues with anxiety and concentration are related to career pursuits, as are some of the more recent manifestations and symptoms that I have developed with my autoimmune conditions, and how those have reflected in my particular experience with long COVID has been that basically, I'm an attorney, and I worked very, very hard to become an attorney. I've had several careers before, not several, I've had a couple of careers before this. I was an educator for a while. I taught creative writing in high schools. I was a cartographer for a while. I've done a whole bunch of things. But my career pursuits did a real number on my mental and physical health, because mental and physical health are the same picture. But all to say, so I've known I was a prophet since I was about 4. And one of the things that I've learned this summer, as I underwent a therapeutic course designed to figure out what it means to live with this disease, one of the things I learned was that I was never supposed to have a career. That wasn't what God wanted for me. God doesn't make prophets so that they can then go into the workforce. That's weird. And I was never supposed to, I was never supposed to do this. I was always supposed to have a religious vocation. And in retrospect, considering that I spent the first 27 years of my life quite in tune with and close to the Holy Spirit, it's not a surprise. But when I was 27, on the heels, about a year after my divorce from my first husband, which that's probably a story I will tell at some point too, I allowed God to render me completely spiritually blind, deaf, and mute. And I didn't know why. I also didn't know how long it would last. And it ended up lasting 5 years. And those 5 years were some of the darkest of my life. It was during those years that I developed long COVID. And when I started this inquiry over the summer, God came crashing back into my life like a car through a window, and turned my whole theology, all of my experiences with God, everything, all on its head. And my cosmology was shattered. Monotheism is pretty silly in retrospect. I'll get into that in the coming weeks too. You're probably going to see a lot of me. But I have learned some very interesting things about life, the universe, and everything, and I've also learned some very interesting things about myself, one of which is that I am also an avatar. I'm an avatar of Aarte, who is the Semitic goddess of love and war, one of the many goddesses who are syncretized under the name Ishtar. And one of the others is my mother, Asherah, who is the wife of the God of the Jews. And Jesus is my brother. And the way that I found out all of this is, when I say I've been on a journey, it was a wild ride learning all of this, especially for someone like me, who is a trained skeptic. And to this day, I still sometimes can't even believe it, because it's totally insane. But insanity is a practice. So, see you around.